announcements. So I'm going to do a little intro to Craig, our speaker for tonight. I first met Craig when he posted in the Be Local channel of Support Driven saying, is anyone interested in coming to Waterloo for a speaker panel? In the spirit of why not, and doing, I guess, one thing I did that scared you, I would raise my hand, and I'm like, okay, why not? And, and it was there that I met the Waterloo support community and everything that Craig built there. And a number of things, I think everything that we're doing right now for this Toronto support meetup is partnering with Thought Support Driven. I'd say one of it was inspired by Craig and what I saw when I went to Waterloo, and I said, are you doing this on behalf of Arctic Wolf? And he said, no, this is not for Arctic Wolf at all. This is like me, myself, doing it because I'm genuinely so passionate and believe in this so much. And that was really inspiring to me, and it's like, this isn't something that I'm doing as like extra work, something you do because you genuinely believe in building this community together. And Craig had a part in community to go to Portland for Support Driven, and that was an amazing experience too. So Craig is also running the Aspire Mentorship Program, connecting support professionals together. That's on like 2 cents in the audience right now. So leader in the field, kind of experience to share, and without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Craig.
I'll try to send by the phone. Thank you. That's a lot of praise to live up to. Yeah, so my name is Chris. I work for a company called Arctic Wolf right now. I'm fairly new there. It's probably about 3 months in. Arctic Wolf is a SOC as a service, the Security Operations Center as a service company. B2B, as you might imagine, you know, we supply both the monitoring hardware as well as the people who monitor that hardware. Sorry, I have a tool in a weird spot. So we're about a 270 person company based between Waterloo and California, Sunnyvale, but we also have offices in Minnesota and in Utah. We're not hiring support reps right now, but we are hiring security engineers. So if you know anyone in the security space, feel free to talk to me afterwards. So this talk actually stems a little bit from the talk I gave at Support Driven. My topic there was really around the topic was called supporting customers where they are, and this is kind of an extension of that. That was a very specific topic, and I kind of more generalized it because I think that it's the tangible examples that really make this something that I'm very passionate about. Because I think if I were to ask all the people in this room how you support your customers, well, maybe I will. If I were to ask you how you support your customers, how many of you immediately would say something like email, phone, chat? Like you would start listing out channels. Let's raise a hand. So would that be your immediate response generally? And I would argue that's not wrong, but I would also argue those channels are tools. That's not how you support your customers. It's the tool that you use to support your customers. How you support your customers is the whole mentality around being customer-centric. What do you do to make your customers feel like they're being supported? And you can use email, chat, and phone to do that. And in fact, I encourage you to do so. But I think we can do better, right? And that's what this is all about. Is I think as a support professionals, we can do better for our customers, and we should be leading the way in this because we should be wanting customers to have better experiences. Because A, that helps our companies, it helps our careers. But also, we're all consumers of our own, so wouldn't we want to have a better experience with the vendors we use on a day-to-day basis? So what is customer centricity? Does that work? So I define customer-centric support as supporting your customers contextually, and that's very important, where they are using the mediums that they prefer. And that's a lot of words on a slide. But I'll give you a real tangible example. So this happened to me in about February this year. I have an FME thermostat in my house. And I came down the stairs one morning, and my house was chilly. It was, we're all from Ontario, we know how February gets. And I looked at the thermostat, and I realized that my auto preset hadn't switched on. Like it hadn't heated the house up for my wake up, my preset. And I looked at it, and it was very obvious the time was wrong. timing wrong on my thermostat. So, I played with it a bit, and what I determined is that the time zone on my thermostat was wrong. It had me in mountain time or something like that. And so, legitimately, it didn't think it was 7 o'clock, so it didn't turn the preset on. Now, I couldn't figure out how to change the time zone using my device, the physical IoT device. I couldn't figure it out on my mobile phone, and I didn't have my computer. I actually left my computer at work the night before, so I didn't have a laptop to do that. So what I decided to do was, well, Ecobee is a pretty responsive company. They have a good social media group. So I tweeted at them. I said, hey, thermostat's got the wrong time zone. Can you help? And by the way, I want to say, I'm not bashing Ecobee support. Ecobee support is actually very good. But I think they can do better, and that's the point of the story. So I tweeted at them. And 3 minutes later, they got back to me and said, yeah, this is probably no issue. We think we know what's wrong. Can you send us, there's some details they need. So I went back to my IoT device, and back to the thermostat. I clicked on the screen they told me to click on, and it was like 3 numbers they needed to identify me, but they were all 20-digit alphanumeric code, and I can't write a text message without autocorrect kicking in 50 times. So I was like, no way I'm typing this out. So I took a picture of it, sent it through Twitter to back at me, assuming that at some point this person's now going to have to manually type in, these digits themselves. And they came back and said, in about 1 hour, your thermostat should be the last time. And that solved the problem. So the whole thing from minute to about an hour. But I argue that's not a great experience. First of all, they know where I live. The very function of the device has to have my address in there. And they should be able to determine that my thermostat is in the wrong time zone because they have to know my address by the way these devices work. So shouldn't they have had some sort of notification on their end that, hey, one of my devices is incorrect? Couldn't they have automatically figured out and proactively fixed it or contacted me and said, hey, we think there's something weird going on with your device? Particularly if it was a known issue, which they indicated it was. Could they have done a scan and said, hey, how many devices are out of sync? But beyond that, why did I have to go back and forth between multiple devices? I was in the context of their IoT device, which is connected to them, which is connected to the internet. Why couldn't I just hit a button that said, I need support, or can you do a diagnostic? Or maybe if I had to go to Twitter, let's say I targeted I had to go to Twitter, but they wanted these details. Well, instead of making me have to figure out how to type and send the details, couldn't I have gone to the device and type in the case number and hit a button and have the details automatically sent to them? There's a ton of different ways that they could have made that experience better for me. They could have made it more contextual. They could have given it to me in a better medium, and they could have supported me where I was. And this is kind of the dilemma of our new SaaS and IoT world, is that we're not near the traditional mediums for support. None of your customers have your support contact page bookmarked. Every time they want to contact you, they're going to Google, company X support and figure out how to contact you, whether it be chat or phone or whatever it might be. That's not where they are. They don't live on your support page. So support them where they are. And what this talk is about how I've been at 3 companies that did customer centricity in different ways. And I wanted to talk to all of you about that. So there are many different approaches to customer centricity, and some of them I already highlighted in that story that is cool. I mean, there's the none approach, and I would argue that that's something you see a lot with many companies where they're not trying to be customer centric. They're trying to meet the need of the buzzword of omni-channel or multi-channel, whichever one they want to use. They don't necessarily care where you are. They just they want you to contact them when you need to, or we need help. So knowledge is a big one, and one that I truly believe in. The knowledge, if anyone's going to use knowledge player support, KCS. I mean, I think that's probably the foundation to a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. Embedded support. I mean, if you're in a SaaS company and you don't embed support directly to your product somehow, you're not doing it correctly, right? I mean, that's just obvious to me. If you literally have a web page that people have to log in that's directly connected to your company, and then you say, by the way, to get support, go somewhere else. I mean, come on. that just doesn't make sense. Predictive analytics, specifically in IoT and SaaS companies, particularly predictive analytics, I mean, you have the data. You have it. You have all this information. Why do you make the customer call and tell you the information you already know if you actually did your homework with the data you have? The IoT products, that is product and guided error messages. Again, I think that we've all seen that error message that something went wrong, please try again. A useless error message in the centric world, right? Guide the user in the various ways. And then one that I think is the crown jewel of this stuff, which is proactive support. To me, proactive support is support where you either fix a problem before a customer knows they're going to have it, or you tell them about it before they see it. One or the other, and we'll talk about that as I go through the presentation. So the frame for this conversation is I'm going to talk about 3 companies. I'm not going to name them. Go to my LinkedIn. I'm sure you can figure out which ones they are. But I feel like these slides have nothing to do with these companies. I'm not bashing these companies or praising these companies. I'm not saying you should be customers of these companies or not. I'm just saying my experience in customer centricity has been done in different ways, and I want to explain it. Any company size, any name of a company, any product can do this different thing. So company number one. Company number one is 6,000 total employees, global, 600 support reps across 5 product lines. A very technical product. The end user of this product were generally engineers. Business to business, and most of it was on-prem. They did have some staff and IoT stuff, but the main portion of the business was an on-prem server, so physical hardware that software was installed on. My team at this company, I ran a support organization. There are 65 global reps, and we covered one of the product lines of the 5. The example I'm going to talk about in a second is something that was started within our organization and branched out into the other 5 product lines. My director, for what it's worth, my boss, that role, he's the senior director of our product line. He went on to be the VP of their support innovation center, was what it's called, and he ran the customer-centric group that created some of these things across all products. So I would argue that company number one was also being proactive. And the 2 examples I'll highlight here were a tool called Samurai. Samurai was the invention of 2 people on my team just after I took over leadership of that team. And essentially, with on-prem software, you always have to ask for data because we don't have the data. Unlike SaaS-based world, unlike IoT devices that aren't connected and send data to you, on-prem world stores on their local server. And so support was constantly asking, can you confirm this log message? Can you send me this configuration file? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what we realized was, similar to what I argue about the SaaS world, that we have the data, was that we had this data in our system. We weren't just utilizing it. We were getting sent a log file, and we were looking for the one error message that we were told by the customer to look for, and then we diagnosed that one issue. But that doesn't mean that was the only issue, and that's where Samurai came in. We said, listen, every time someone sends us a package of data, I don't know if I listed up here. No, they have this thing called a support package. The support package was gathered through the tool, and we were getting the wizard. He said, give me a support package. And that package contained all the configuration, all the logging, everything about the server performance for, I think it's sorted for about 60 days. So every time one of those was sent into our CRM tool, Samurai took over and sliced that data up, and it ran against a rule book of 125 of our most known problems. And it spit out an HTML report that was listed in order from critical to maybe look at all the problems discovered on that person's server. The power of that was incredible. Our customers loved it. Because they'd call in and say, listen, John Smith over there got some weird error, can you tell me what it is? And we'd say, hey, in 2 weeks, your server's going to crash because the memory is wrong. Imagine the power of that, right? Imagine you would tell the customer, listen, you need to do something because in 2 weeks something very bad is going to happen to you. That tool is now freely available to any customer of that company on their website, and their customers can just go to the website anytime they want, upload this package called support package, and it will spit out this report automatically for customer anytime. And it's also all around automatically on any support ticket that contains a support package. The 120, and the other benefit is, it's not just benefit to customers. How many of you spend 2, 3, 4 weeks, months training support reps? What if the day you hire a support rep, they can you put that person in a chair, and they can use Samurai to solve your top 125 cases the first day they get there without even going with the starting meeting. It's pretty powerful for a company too. The second thing this company did was this is a big company, billions of dollars, and so they had a couple PhD data analysts. And they said, listen, we have this concept of escalated tickets. They call them red counts. And the count would go red whenever a ticket or multiple tickets were escalated up to a manager. And the way their ticketing system was set up is the customer could actually go in, and there was like a button in their portal that said, make me red, basically. And so management, my boss, this was his initiative, he went out and said, there must be a pattern here. There must be reasons why this stuff happens. You know, it could be that people hate Mondays, and so cases over on Mondays are more likely to escalate. It could be a lack of response. It could be a certain person on the support team. There's patterns to this data. So they took these two PhD data analysts, and they said, listen, I want you to analyze every single ticket in the system. There was about 5 years of data history. And we want you to tell us the closest correlations to red accounts as possible. And they spent weeks, months, I don't know how long, they spent a long, long time. And they came back and they found 20 key indicators. And it was something you wouldn't even think about. Day of the week was one, that example was actually real. The day of the week was like one of the highest correlated reasons for a case to go, not reasons, correlation for a case to go red. So they came up with an algorithm that scanned the CRM tool, and they ran the algorithm against the same 5-year history, and sure enough, they had an 85% accuracy rating of predicting if the ticket went red, based on these 20 indicators. They now run this in production, such that anytime a ticket is open, a ticket every night, those tickets are monitored every night through this algorithm, and it's flagged to support rep saying it's likely this ticket is going to go red. And so, do what you will with that information, give it more priority, maybe pre-escalate it for them, maybe get someone more senior to help you, whatever it might be, but we are going to predict that this ticket probably will go red. They know they used to have a whole team called the Red Account Escalation Team. That team no longer exists. They moved them all into customer success and focused them on customer upsells. Again, think about how powerful that is to stop these problems before they get there. Stop pissing off your customers. So company number one will be correct. Company number two. Company number two is about 120 employees. There were over 10 of us in support. I led this team, this support team here. We were both B2B and B2C. It was a SaaS-based company that had a premium product and a paid enterprise solution. And it was mostly non-technical products. So especially in the B2C world, we were dealing with a lot of non-technical people. The company profile, as you can tell, is quite a bit different than the last company. So this company, the focus on customer centricity here was around providing useful content. What they identified was because the customers were largely non-technical, they largely had the same problems. And so we started a knowledge-centered service, a knowledge-centered support initiative, and we created content. Has anybody here used KCS before? Do you know what I talk about KCS? Do you know what that actually means? So, a couple of people. So knowledge-centered support, and I want to talk about this really briefly, kind of important for the next bullet point. Knowledge-centered support is the idea that you document your knowledge-based documentation happens in real time. So every time a ticket is open, you assess that ticket and say, could the customer have answered this question if they search the knowledge base? And if the answer is no, you write an article. That becomes your responsibility as a support rep. As part of the closing of the ticket, you have to write an article. And so what that leads to is a measure called attachment rate. And attachment rate is what is the number of tickets that come into the system from our customers that could have been solved by a piece of existing content. So the more repetitive your support is, the higher that number should be. And in this case, it was 90%. So what that number actually means practically is that 9 out of every 10 cases open could have been solved had the customer looked at the knowledge base. Now imagine that in itself is powerful, right? I mean, that's 90% of the workload of support could be deflected away from support if the customer had searched their knowledge base. The problem with that was we didn't put the knowledge base in the right spot, right? This goes back to embedding support. If you have a problem with the product, which in this case is a SaaS product, you're not going to leave that product to go and search a knowledge base. You need the knowledge base embedded in your software. Or, I would argue, to take a step further, you need to be able to identify the sequence of events that lead to those errors and pop up a window saying, hey, you're about to hit a really weird error, maybe you should read this knowledge base. And that's the second bullet point here, is that they didn't do much else. Oh, that's just a comment. The video walkthroughs were on 30% of the content, so they have both the text and the video walkthrough. I would argue that's very customer-centric too. Walking your customers through things using video or Iffy is pretty powerful. Seeing is better than telling for sure. This is an issue that I picked off, and I really believe that video, especially for non-technical users, is important. But that's something didn't do much else. And I want to talk a little why, because it fits into my kind of later slide when I talk about how you can identify customer centricity in your company. This company was very much full of silos. Each department ran very separately from each other. There was very little cross-functional collaboration. I'd argue between some of those relations, there was very little trust. And so when I went to a development leader and I would say, hey, I'd like to alter this error message to link to a knowledge base article because every time this error comes up, our customers call us, that was just seen as added work. That was added development time. They wanted to, if we were going to do something like that, they wanted to build a framework around it. They wanted to make it a big issue, and they didn't have time for that. They were too busy building other stuff. And this is very important because if you notice a trend in everything that I'm saying so far, the trend is that while support can champion this stuff, and I think support is the right people to identify this stuff, most of the stuff needs some level of cross-functional collaboration. For example, think about my Activity example. Activity doesn't have an input device on it. It doesn't have a keyboard, it doesn't have a widget for that. So if I were to type in a support number, well, I couldn't do that. That's a product design thing. You think about your IoT lawnmowers. Let's say you want to do something smart with your IoT lawnmowers and supporting an IoT lawnmower. Because when you're mowing the lawn, you don't necessarily have your phone or your laptop. That might require that you get a display panel, right? I don't know the IoT lawnmowers, but that's a physical design issue. That's get your physical design engineers to look at it, right? All of this stuff. Some of it may involve technical writers. Some of it may involve buying software. Not my next example. All of this stuff involves multiple departments. And so when this company doesn't have that cross-functional trust or collaboration, customer centricity breaks down. So while I would argue the knowledge base is incredible, and customers love the fact that it can help them 24/7 without having to call someone, it didn't go much beyond that. And I would say that's a failing on a SaaS company. Okay, so company number three. Company number 3 is 90 employees. 7 of those in support. It's a government technology company, or is a government technology company, SaaS-based, very non-technical product. incredibly non-technical. It was sold to mainly governments, so we have mainly non-technical users, but the product is very basic. There was no real training manual for this product. It was pretty much, you turn it on, it was pretty intuitive how you use it. This was a company that was founded on customer experience. One of the founders, one of the first 4 employees, was now the VP of customer experience. And he, from the very beginning, had a customer-centric mindset. He knew that we were selling to people who did not know technology. And so therefore the technology had to be guided, had to make them know where they needed to be. They had to have the support they needed, when they needed it, in the place they needed it. All the things that I put in my definition. I'll take you through 4 initiatives. My favorite one is the first one, but it's also the most interesting one to explain. This company had a concept that they called PTD, which was proactive reflection. And you need to understand what about this company. They had these objects that were the main objects. They were called projects. It was the main object that you interacted with within this SaaS platform. And there was an infinite number of combinations of how you could set up a project. And most of them were valid. In fact, I would argue all of them were valid. Some would do different things that weren't normal, but that doesn't mean it wasn't valid. So the decision on the product side was to let people set whatever options up. But we knew that certain patterns in certain types of government agencies led to less success. They might run into errors further down the line. They may not get the response they were expecting from the usage of the project object. They would be less successful with the product overall. So what we did, we took the top 20 known cases where customers might be less successful with the product. So these are cases that the customer will call in after the thing was done and say, wait, that didn't really overwhelm me. That didn't work. The value proposition is not there. It led to churn. They took the 20 known cases and they ran every night against the database, against all projects in the system, those 20 known combinations. And then they connected to Zendesk using the API. They spawned a ticket if they noticed one of these patterns. They would email the customer. They would, in the email, would say, dear customer, this project link was identified as this problem linked to a knowledge base article. We believe this may lead to less success for this reason, more information. Here's a way to fix that, link to a knowledge base article. If you have any troubles, reply to this message and we'll get back in touch with you. It was incredible how powerful this was. We reduced tickets for these 20 issues by 98%. And when customers did respond, when customers did have a problem, they responded earlier, not when everything was finished and they were less successful, but they responded earlier saying, not sure I understand what you're talking about, I want to do it this way, can you tell me more information? And we never had to ask them what they were talking about, because the case we automatically opened had links to all the project, the customer, the person that owned it, all those details were in that case already. So we didn't have to say, well, could you confirm what project you're talking about? Could you confirm what company you're from? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was a much better customer-centric experience. We did knowledge support this company as well. We had a 70% attachment rate, which I thought was about right for this particular company. So a little bit lower than the last company. The CTO of this company was the best CTO I've ever met in my career. He truly understood the value, just like I said, this company was founded with customer experience. He understood as well the value of putting effort into the product to guide customers. We had any product guidance everywhere. We were even part of before I left this company, part of my last role was to get a tool called Pendo, if anyone's used it. Pendo is a tool that basically measures everything that happens within the SaaS application. So it measures clicks, it measures fields you fill in the forms, it measures patterns of clicks, so you can actually say, well, we expect customers to click ABC, but we can tell if people are clicking ABD, what's going on there, is a user experience problem. The data in this stuff, you spend years looking at, days worth of data. It's absolutely overwhelming. But what it does let you do is it lets you very easily identify problem areas where customers are going wrong. So when a customer gets an error, you can go and trace exactly how they got to that error. And then, if you know they're going to go down this path, if you know ABD started leads to an error message, you can put a widget up automatically using Pendo and says, hey, you might get this error if you click D. Here's a knowledge base article on why you should put C in this case. Just be aware of that, or something to that effect. Right? You can start to proactively predict what they're going to do and correct the actions before they do it. This tool, I could probably do a whole half-hour, 45-minute talk on just this tool. It was incredible what you could do. The other thing that we use it for within support, this is a non-technical group of people. We had people that when you said, well, what browser are you using? They would reply, the internet. And so, this tool though would let us know what browser we were using. It measured that, what operating system they were using. We could tell if they were, I won't say lying, but lying. It was an incredibly powerful tool to be able to look up what was going on with the customer and not have to have a non-technical person explain to you a technical thing. Because they don't know. They don't need it. It's not that they're lying to you. They're not misremembering. They're trying to achieve an action, and we're saying, well, tell us all the steps of those actions. And they just don't know them. And the final thing was, this is Pendo as well, I suppose. This is my other final example. Was the file the Chrome or like to be able to tell through data analytics what they were doing. So, how do you seek out customer centricity? So if you're looking for a new job, I would argue in the interview, you need to start asking questions about the customer's view on customer centricity. How do you support your customers? If they start listening channel, you can chuckle to yourself because you could say, well, I don't, now that I've heard Craig talk, I think it's the wrong answer. How free are you to make decisions that benefit the customer? This is an interesting one to me. I wrote an article on this. It's not published yet. I wrote it for Help Scout. It should be published in the next month or so. I have this concept that I do support kind of like a planet. And the core of that planet is the process and policy and the stuff that has to exist in order for a department. It's the title, the hierarchy, it's the stuff that you have to exist. And if you bury your support department in the core of a planet, they'll work, they'll have support, but you're going to have support like Rogers has support. Because they can't break free of that. They're not allowed to break free of that core, right? They're stuck in that molten rock area. And then where most companies are today is in the mantle, a bit around the core, right? And that's the part where we start putting in some interesting tools, and we start giving, maybe we put the knowledge base in there. And people see these things, but they're kind of like on far off islands, and they can use one tool at a time. They can, they have like these processes or playbooks that they follow, and they have a script almost. And that's fine, that's where most companies play it. I argue want to be one step above that in like the lower atmosphere, where you can allow your support reps to like fly around this planet and pick up different tools from different islands and put them together and use them creatively. One of the best examples of this is the Ritz-Carlton has the policy that any employee can spend up to $2,000 to solve a customer problem without getting approval from any manager. That to me is a customer-centric policy. That to me is a lower atmosphere policy. They're allowing that person to go and see all the tools the planet offers, everything that we could possibly imagine in the world, and float around and pick up the various things they want and put them together and build a custom solution for their client. That is an awesome policy. And then in my article, I talk the other aspect of the chaos, right? You don't want to get too far. There's a reason why there's a limit of $2,000 on that. That's over the policy, right? What cross-functional relationship can mean exists today to drive customer-centric initiatives? Again, I ask this in every interview since I was at company number 2. Are you a cross-functional organization? Do you work together? Do you trust each other? Any part of your roadmap, any part of your product roadmap dedicated to improving support? The answer is no. That's a pretty big indicator that there's kind of a problem. But I think if any company would think about it, they would say that there is so much value. But I think for most people who aren't looking for jobs, it's the internal actions that I think if you want to go back to your offices tomorrow and think about with your leadership team. You know, can we get management buy-in for this stuff? Do we see the value in it? Can we talk to cross-functional leaders to make sure they agree with us? Do we see the value in this stuff? One of my models is progress, not perfection. You know, I think that if you start with error messages today, make your error messages better. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit. It's text. You probably could write the error messages and deliver them to the R&D team, and they'd be 10 times better. I mean, I love developers, but they're not technical writers. Right? That's not their job. And then the most important question, and I probably should have bolded this one, where are your customers? Support your customers where they are in the context they're in. Where are your customers? Because I guarantee you the answer is not on your support contact page. And then what data do you have? Again, most SaaS-based companies and IoT companies have this data. Think about a world where an error occurs on a user site or whatever tool they're using, and a bunch of information is immediately downloaded to your support department. And when the person calls in and says, hey, I'm Jimmy, it's like, well, hey, Jimmy, I see you just had this error. We already have the knowledge base queued up for you. You know, read this article and you'll solve the problem. As opposed to, actually, Jimmy, could you explain the 10 steps that you just took to get to that error message? And could you tell me what browser you're using? And could you tell me what time you hit that, that button? You don't need to. You have the data. I remember I used to book a lot of flights. I used to travel full time for my work. And I remember I was sitting at home one day and I booked a flight someplace weird. I forget where I was booking it. I hit the button on the website to buy the flight. I hit purchase. And before the web page loaded, my phone rang. And it was my credit card company saying, did you just book a very expensive flight to a very weird place that you don't normally go? That's customer-centric. And I can't believe I'm saying about a credit card company, right? That's so powerful. So powerful. And then what's your most valuable low-hanging fruit? And I think you probably think of something right now. Honestly, if I challenge you to write down your low-hanging fruit, I'm sure you could think of something that could be considered under my definition of customer centricity that you could do probably very short term. Start with that, because I think if you did start with that, you'll have a lot of success. I don't know why it's not advancing, but anyways, that's the end. So that's my take on customer centricity. I hope that the points I want to drive home here are any company can do this. This is not out of reach. If you're a small company or a massive company, it's not out of reach. I did talk a lot about SaaS IT because I think those are the common use cases which are doing it wrong most today, but I think it fits in any support type department. And always think about where your customers are. Those are probably the two main points I'd like to get across today. Where are your customers? How can you support them there? Not providing channels on a web page somewhere in the internet. So thank you very much.